Hello, I'm Kona Gallagher.
And I'm Ethan Flick.
We're the husband and wife team behind the True Crime podcast, And Then They Were Gone.
We're a weekly show that covers unsolved missing persons cases. These are cases that you, the listener, can have an impact on.
Some of the people you may have heard of, like Kristen Smart or Braceless Pisa. But we also bring you missing people of color and other cases that haven't gotten the mainstream attention that they deserve. You can find us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Good Pods, or your favorite podcast app.
Darkcast Network, bringing our indie podcasts out of the shadows.
Greetings, my dear magical ears. Welcome to the Bell Witch Podcast, a magical podcast to get you witching in the 21st century. It feels like absolutely loads has happened since I last spoke to you. I have really missed podcasting. You know, I had the month of August off, which I need to do because kids and summer holidays. And I really missed it. I really missed podcasting. There was no way I could have done it like. And luckily I had lots of things I could upload for you to keep my little feed warm. My lovely hubby organised an amazing little getaway for us to go down to the southwest coast of Britain, which is where all the magic's at. And this was a very big deal to me because, as you know, I'm going to be 40 this month and my mum didn't quite make it to 40, and going to Cornwall with my mum, that was our last holiday together. So I guess it's like a celebratory trip that I'm still alive, well and kicking. And you know it's totally going to make an excellent magical podcast episode. So this is a bit of a witchy audio tour of all the magical places I saw, including Stonehenge and Tintagel Castle, a few stone circles. It's going to be a two-parter because there's just so much, and I've spent a lot of time and effort on this one because I've read like mad, discovered all kinds of really cool trivia about assortments of bits of Cornwall and Merlin and Arthur and all that jazz. Some may say I overdid it a little bit, a tiny bit. It was a very inspiring trip. So on this audio tour, we're going to visit Stonehenge, the Hurlers Stone Circle, Tintagel Castle, Land's End, and the Merry Maidens Stone Circle. Not in that order. And then the last two places will be the Museum of Witchcraft and Magic in Castle and the beautiful Chalice Well. But them two are going to be on the second part because, like I say, there's just so much I want to talk to you about. And in all honesty, listener, this has been really hard to do, I think, as a podcaster. When you have a big chunk of time from podcasting, you kind of forget a little bit how to do it. And for a couple of nights, I stared at my blinky computer going like, I can't do this. I don't know what to do. It's just not there. And so it's taken me quite a long time to pull this one together. And it is just practice. I'm up and running now, so hopefully that stage has gone. Them recent reviews really helped me. Magic dancers, I see you. Thank you so much for your reviews and ratings. They really do help confidence and to defeat that old imposter syndrome. So please keep them coming if you can. How are you doing? I hope you've had a fantastic summer. We're now in September. Spooky season is definitely on the way. I think we're all ready to get cosy with mugs of tea and soft jumpers. Turns out while I was away, I actually won the Pagans of the North Spotlight Award for the Best Witchy Podcast for a second time in a row. So I've got 2004 and 2005. Wow. Thank you so much to everybody who voted for me. I am really chuffed. considering I didn't even know I'd been entered. So when I found out I'd won, I was like, yippee! It is my birthday month of September. To celebrate, I'm doing an amazing book collab with my friends over at Free Ravens podcast, who are now part of the Darkcast network, might I add. They sent me a fantastic, gorgeous, sexy book signed. That is the prize for the current giveaway that I'm running on Instagram, the Bell Witch podcast, separated by underscores. It's pinned right at the top. Have a read, enter, and you may win a signed book. The winner will be notified on the 21st, day after my 40th, so I'll probably be hungover doing it, but I will do it. And then I've also had loads and loads of guests contact me about coming on. Some publishers wanting me to send books to do even more competitions. I can't lie, I did get a little bit overwhelmed while I was away. I had quite a few emails wanting to come on, and I've already got a list of about 8 to 10 guests wanting to come on, and I've also got 3 or 4 waiting to be edited, so it's all getting a bit like, I don't know what I'm doing. It is good though, and I'm grateful, but there's just something really weird about the holidays. I can't seem to function past the holidays until the kids go back, and then I can resume my normal Swailes life. It's really strange. Welcome to my brand spanking new paid Patreon subscribers, Lee Ann Hambry and Buddy Mary, which I bloody love that name. So hi and welcome. And there's lots of free members, but I am trying to disencourage you from becoming a free member because nobody benefits. I don't benefit, you don't benefit. The only people that benefit is Patreon. They get your subscriber details. Yeah, it's a bit naff. You can join as a trial member for a week, see what there is on there. There's quite a lot at the moment. Have a wander round. I do try and do at least 2 posts a month, which tend to be exclusives. Plus early access, ad-free episodes, a little bit of personal stuff, poetry, discounts, journal, sigils, etc. It's worth a look and it helps me keep going. So, without any further ado, I shall hit play on this long-awaited Solitary Witch episode. Sit back, relax, pour yourself a magical beverage and let's go. I have to talk to you about this amazing monument that took my breath away. That was Stonehenge. It was the first stop on our little witchy tour. And it was amazing really how, even as you catch a glimpse of it coming up the A303, which crosses the flat emptiness of the Salisbury Plains, they are beautiful of course, but Stonehenge does command attention from passers-by, and I think that's really obvious in the fact that there's always a massive traffic jam on the way past, so at least the car's slow and you can get a good look. And it did look really impressive from all the way over on the road, and I was a bit worried that it wasn't going to live up to my expectations because I'd seen it so often on social media, on TV, movies and online, and you know, it's iconic, isn't it? So I was a bit like, oh, is it going to stand up to my expectations? And it honestly did. I mean, there's like a little museum and like an outdoor bit where it shows you how Neolithic people may have lived, hunter-gatherers. And there's a bus that takes to Stonehenge, or you can walk it. I mean, we had kids and we were on a tight schedule, so of course we didn't do that, although I would have really have liked to actually. And all that was all right. I mean, it was incredibly people-y because it was so busy because, of course, it was the summer holidays. And I'd read that it was a good idea to do the museum before you do the stones, but in all honesty, I wasn't really interested. I wanted to see the stones, so we didn't spend much time looking at all the bones and the videos and the pottery and all that. Although I did learn about the stages of progression with the Stonehenge, which is massive, and I didn't realise just how much Stonehenge has changed and evolved and been adapted and moved around. So that was quite cool, which I'll talk about a little bit later on. But I got on the bus to Stonehenge and then it's all roped off. You know, you can walk around it from a distance, and it is a distance, I must admit. It's not actually 50 yards, which is what I quoted on the Patreon episode called The Dark Side of Stonehenge. 50 yards is how close you can get if you just walk on the public path down the side of it. So in my opinion, it's very worth paying to go see it to get a lot closer than 50 yards. Visitors are kept about 10 metres away from the stones, and that's roughly about 11 yards by a rope, but there's lots of staff on hand to answer your questions, and they're so knowledgeable, honestly, and they know loads. But also they are really strict with the rope. I mean, you can't go anywhere near, and they will get cross if you do. I'd taken an offering of an oak leaf and an acorn on a branch that I got from Centre Parks previously, and I went to the guy and said I'd really like to put this offering by the heel stone because for some reason I'm really drawn to the heel stone, but I just have to reach over the rope to do it. And he were like, you can't do that. I said, I won't touch the stones, I promise. And he was stood there for ages going, you promise you won't touch the stones? If you do touch the stone, you'll be out of here. You know, it's really important that you don't touch it. And I was like, you have my word. I won't touch this stone because I do have a lot of respect for it, and I do want it to be looked after. And we don't have to touch things to experience them. Being in its presence was so massive and absolutely enough. Again, it was a really busy day. It was a really hot day, scorching, and there were loads of people walking around doing the whole, you know, trying to capture a picture of it with it Stonehenge on their hand and them leaning on it and stuff, like fun with perspective. But I was just so serious. I can't believe how serious I was. And I lost the family to ice cream, and I walked around on my own trying to really, really be present because I could just feel the history and the atmosphere. It just demanded so much from me. It was huge. And I had my big camera with me to try and get some good pictures. Not that I'm a photographer, you know, and people just presumed I was a photographer and I was being asked to take pictures for other people on their phone. But I would just like, I'll do that right quick, and then here's your camera. I'm going to talk to the stones. Oh my gosh, it was amazing. I didn't want to leave. They are so unique, and the only henge that has stones on them in this way, you know, with the stone that goes over the top. There is a name for it, which I can't quite get. Lintel stones, that's what they're called. I had to look it up because it was annoying me so much. They're enormous. I cannot believe how big they are. Big, present, like, oh, a little bit foreboding, a little bit dark. It is quite morbid, really, when you think about it. Like, there's a lot of death there because there's skeletons around, and there's probably still skeletons buried in the grounds around because they found loads throughout the history while they were excavating. And I did a dark episode about this because I was so inspired. When I got home, I was like, I need to empty my brain onto Patreon. So, Stonehenge was constructed at the beginning of the 3rd millennium. That's very, 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 very old. That is 500 years before the pyramids, and it looked nothing like it does now. When it began, it was a series of 56 posts. Some believe they were wood and some believe they were stone, but not this stone that's there today. And the reason why we know this is because there's little holes known as Aubrey holes in a perfect circle, not lined up with Stonehenge as it is now. The holes are named after the 17th century historian archaeologist John Aubrey, who discovered them in 1666. Isn't that an interesting number? The ditch and the bank is what made Stonehenge a henge. People dug up earth to create something and arranged the earth in a circle around what they were making, and that seems to be how henges come about. But maybe these stones were a kind of calendar or a sundial, perhaps a way to predict the seasons and best time for hunting. Maybe hunter-gatherers used them for the seasons. I mean, that's kind of what I feel they are. But why was this landscape chosen? Why did the Neolithic people of this age choose this place to create this henge? possibly on the chalky uplands of the Salisbury Plains. It was cleared of the wild woods, undergrowth that spread across the lands after the last ice age. It could have been something just as simple as that. There is also a water source very near to Stonehenge, which is the River Avon. And there's also, I think I heard this on a Ronald Hutton discussion, beneath the stones there lies an aquifer with the most pristine water that runs actually underneath. And there has been studies and architectural investigations that suggest the presence of a complex network of water systems in the vicinity, which could have influenced the location and construction of Stonehenge. Or is it something to do with ley lines? Now, ley lines are such an interesting topic. I am fascinated by this. Ley lines are a hypothetical alignment of various historical sites and geographical features. The concept suggests that ancient monuments, churches, and other significant locations are aligned in long straight lines across the landscape. Some believe that this has spiritual significance, while others view them as a product of coincidence or selective interpretation. Keeping it balanced there. Common examples such as stone circles and Avebury in England, ancient burial monuments, which are found in various cultures, churches and cathedrals, and natural features such as mountains, rivers, and other significant geographical landmarks that may be included in these theories. I mean, this idea is that these alignments may reflect ancient pathways or routes used by people to trade, pilgrimage, or other purposes. But it's important to note that the concept of ley lines is largely speculative and not universally accepted in the academic community. I was watching this video about ley lines on the old blooming TikTok, and there was this guy saying if you ley line up all of the structures and significant places, sacred places all over the world. Right, I need to make sense of this because it did seem quite complicated. So he started with Stonehenge and he was saying a circle. Stonehenge is a circle, and this could be seen as a vortex because there's lots of different energies there, and a vortex needs something to home in the power or something. So as in like Tesla's machines had a triangle. So you start from the pyramids and link everything up, and that makes, get this, the shape of a pentacle, a repeated pentacle all over the globe. And if you take away all the straight lines, it makes like the pattern of, sound waves going up and down, up and down. Oh my God, it was amazing. I proper butchered it. I'll link it in the show notes because it was absolutely fascinating and made me go like, but I'm not brainy enough to tell it how it needs to be told. The Neolithic people and hunter-gatherers made communities and believed in the gods and the goddesses and the spirits and ancestors, etc. And they've created a space to worship. It is believed that there was ritual present in a honouring of higher realms, because I guess the people were just so plugged into the earth because, there were people who survived in the most natural and dangerous ways of living. There was no technology back then, and they were doing rituals and sacrifices and, in my mind, kind of like spells and witchcraft. There was a lot of death and people started to realise there's more to life than this, I guess. It's hard to put into words, but around these Aubrey holes, there were a lot of stuff found, like tools and offerings and loads of bones from different animals, and that suggests that maybe it was an offering or a ritual of death and burial, or an asking for prosperity and good luck for the harvest or the hunt. Maybe Paleolithic funerals had begun, which is just mind-blowing. Stonehenge is the oldest cemetery in the sacred burial rituals in the UK and even Europe. It seemed to be a temple or a ritual ground associated with birth, death, sun, moon, day and night. And throughout all the millennials, blue stones were added, and then the stanza stones were outside of the blue stones. I read something that this could have been inspired by star constellations. Is that a word? Constellations. And it wasn't a circle anymore. It became a horseshoe shape so people could enter it, perhaps. In my library, it turns out they've got amazing, fantastic books about stone circles around the country. And there's one called A Guide to the Stone Circles of Britain, Ireland and Brittany by Aubrey Burl, and it is really good. And this bit of research surprised me because in this book, the risings on the stones were determined by the prolonged sightings through 3 lunar cycles of 18 and 61 years, 2 generations of observations as the moon slowly swung back and forth between its major and minor positions. Don't you think that's amazing? People always associate Stonehenge with the sun, the solstices, the longest day and the shortest day. And it can't be a coincidence that the way the stones stand, it perfectly captures the sunrise and the sunset of the longest and shortest days. But it must have begun, according to this book, about the moon. An association between the moon and death existed in the long burrows that were the burial places of early Neolithic societies of the plain. The earliest earthwork contained alignments to the south and to the northeast moonrise. It says the similar lunar interest at Stonehenge suggests that the enclosure may have been a funerary centre for which corpses were left to decay before their final interment of their bones elsewhere. It also explains why, despite popular belief, the outlying heel stone beyond the northeast entrance was not orientated on the midsummer sunrise, standing in the line with the entrance right-hand side. It had been erected midway between the northern moon's major and minor risings. When the rising moon reappeared to the left of the stone, people knew that 4 years later it would be at its northernmost. I don't really know if that makes sense, but that's what it says in the book. I like that. And I'm trying to bring you stuff that's lesser known. I mean, I've read so many books on Stonehenge. I have got completely obsessed with it, but a lot of it is written and I don't want to just give you stuff that is really easily available. So I've really troweled through what I can tell you about it from a more magical, unknown point of view, a surprising point of view, and not so scientific or academic, but more mysterious and intriguing point of view. Stonehenge also has an amazing little connection to Merlin, and this explains Stonehenge's alter ego or nickname, which is the Stones of the Giants' Dance. Merlin has always lived around there and has wandered around the fields and the villages, helping the cunning folk and the townspeople of the southwest, giving them hints and tips how to live their best magical life. He saw some bluestone going on and suggested that the people could construct a monument that will have the same healing properties as Mount Kilimanjaro in Ireland. Being a magician and a magical soul, he had lots of acquaintances with the more mythical creatures such as giants, of which he managed to convince them to come on board and make this magical new monument which will go down in history. It would also serve to create a fitting memorial for noble Britain slaughtered by invading Saxons. But it was a big ask because these giants had to carry these huge stones over 100 miles over the border of Wales and up to Stonehenge. He must have been very persuasive, and he did this on the order of King Arthur's uncle, Ambrosius Aurelius. Can't read it. So that must have helped too. And I think this was before Arthur was born. I get that feeling. I don't know if that's correct, but there's so much literature on this. It really is a brief telling of a very detailed and well-known folklore story of Stonehenge. The blue stone is on the inner ring of Stonehenge as it stands now, which is like the third positioning, I think, of how it's progressed through history. But I mean, I couldn't get near any bluestone, so I couldn't really feel much there. I don't know. I wish I could. I wish I could have been allowed to be involved with bluestone. And they did have a little bit in the museum, but I think because that one got touched all the time, it felt a bit dead to me. It was just some they brought in, I guess, to give you examples of the two stones. And I quite like the story, which I've already told on my Patreon episode, but there is a stone that looks a bit like a table called the sacrificial stone. And Victorians, because they were just so gory and into all the dark stuff, they believed that it was a table that people sacrificed on in the temple as a ritual, because when it rained, the sacrificial stone turns a deep red and it looks like blood of the ancestors or the victims or whatever you want to call them, when in fact that's just lots of iron coming up to the surface with the rainwater. It must look really cool and a little bit foreboding when it happens. For a long time, up until I think the beginning of this century, people believed that's what it was, and it might have been either the 1920s or the 1950s when actually it was put right. Archaeologists figured out that this stone used to be stood upright as part of the outer ring between, I think it's the heel stone, it's near the heel stone, and the outer ring. It's definitely not a sacrificial table. But yeah, it's the environment is very interesting. There's definitely an interesting energy, I'm going to say. Even though it's just so touristy now, I could still feel like an underlying, I don't want to say darkness, but something that's not so romanticised as Stonehenge really is now. But I'm just so aware of its history. And there's so much death. There is a lot of death when you look into it. There's many beheaded bodies found, remains, and it is quite dark, and there's some UFO stuff going on, and it's a mass grave site. It's a burial ground. And I 100% understand why we are not allowed to go near them and touch them. They really do need protecting and respecting, so much respecting. Not so long ago, people used to chip off little bits of it and take it home like a souvenir, which just blows my mind. And throughout the 70s, they used to hold rock concerts within and around the Stones, and it was like music for the Stones. So all these metalheads used to head down there and just blast out metal on a stage for the Stones. I bet that were proper hairy, and I can't quite believe that happened in the 70s, but hey. The pull to go back is enormous, and I wasn't quite prepared for that. The whole place down south, you probably know this, a lot of witches will feel this way, like definitely Glastonbury and Cornwall and all that. I just want to go back and see all the stone circles and the ancient monuments. It's such a magical place. And if you have got the opportunity to go visit, I absolutely highly recommend. And yeah, you can walk past for free, but I've got to be honest, it's not as good. And if you do have the opportunity and the money, I highly encourage you. Maybe even become a member of the English Heritage. You could see one more place like Tintagel Castle, and then you've got your membership back for a year, and loads of other stuff is free all over the country, so it's well worth it. Right, I'm going to end on this quote because we've got a lot to get through yet. And I think this sums up perfectly how I feel about Stonehenge. This quote is from Dr. Andrew Lawson on the act of visiting Stonehenge as a tourist. It's like entering a cathedral and only looking at the altar. There really is just so much more to Stonehenge than what meets the eye. The next stone circle we visited is known as the Hurlers and is one of Cornwall's most unique examples of stone circles that they have. And there's a few reasons why it's a unique one. This stone circle is a set of 3 together, which apparently is really rare. It reminds me of Thornborough and the way there's 3 henges together, although they are really big and they are quite far spread apart in different fields, whereas these stone circles were very close together and you could easily walk around them and take them all in. These 3 circles lay across Bodmin Moor next to the road, and the middle circle is really well established and you can tell that it's a circle, whereas the one before it is quite weathered and a bit missing, and the one after it, we couldn't even find where it was. And me and the kids walked around for quite a while trying to locate the 3rd circle. It was a little bit windy, overcast day, not quite as nice weather as we had at Stonehenge. There were sheep everywhere, absolutely everywhere. They pretty much owned this part of the moor around the stone circle, which I actually quite loved, like they were really close to the stones. It's like they had a little bit of a relationship with them, which I just love to think. And it did have a masculine feel to it, and I think a lot of that was the weather and how there were nothing around. It was very isolated on the moors. It did feel a bit sparse. And I noticed that there were a little house in the background. I don't know if that was part of it or if it were just an old ruin or something, but it just had a little bit of a foreboding feel. Might have been one of those places that hikers can bed down for the night. Is it a bothy or something? These stone circles felt really self-reliant, like they didn't really need anybody. And I did want to spend a lot more time with them than I could. My kids were bored and they'd had enough, and we were on our way to somewhere else and everybody was tired, blah, blah, blah. But I am sure I got some very nice pictures with my posh Nikon camera that I haven't actually looked at yet because I needed a card reader. If they're a bit spooky or if there's something on there, I will share it with you. There is a little car park for these stones with a little path that leads towards them, and a little bit further out from the 3 stone circles there are these 2 ominous standing stones set apart, and these are known as the Pipers. There's a little information board written by the Cornwall Heritage Trust which reads, quote, "A prehistoric ceremonial monument. The Hurlers is a late Neolithic or early Bronze Age ceremonial monument. The 3 stone circles are some of the best examples in Cornwall, and their arrangement in a row is unique. The Hurler site comprises of 3 large stone circles. The stones are made of granite and have been smoothed by hand. While the exact function of this site is unknown, stone circles have traditionally been seen as places for community gatherings. It has also been suggested that the stone circles mark a precessional route that ran between the Neolithic hilltop settlement at Stows Hill to the north and Caladron Hill Borough Cemetery to the south." End quote. Ooh, that's a bit posh. So these stones are unusual as well because they show signs of being quarried, dressed and shaped by hand. They're not so rugged. Somebody took time to make them a certain design for this monument, which is a very rare occurrence for stone circles in the Neolithic times. If you're listening to this podcast, that probably means you're a witch, a pagan, or an eco-warrior. I am too. And if you're like me, you are probably feeling a little bit of guilt over how we use the internet. We know that when we use a search engine, it's massively impacting the ecosystem, the water resources, them huge master computers that is the cloud. When we search, we say, I'm just going to have a Google. It's a bit like saying, I'm going to do the hoovering with a vacuum. You don't really have a hoover, but yet we say this, and the same goes with Google. Allow me to bring to your attention Ecosia. which is now set as my default browser in place of Safari, and it is just as good. When you use this search engine, every 24 hours it rewards you with a virtual seed, and all these seeds equal real living trees. Ecosia plant in 35 plus countries with local organisations. They restore protective biodiversity hotspots and grow over 500 different native species where they are most needed throughout the world. There is 20 million people using Ecosia, and I am inviting you to join us. And yes, they do have AI chat. Ecosia could become recognised as the pagan search engine. So I've been reading lots of little books about this, stone circles, this specific circle, which has a lot of information. And this bit of information I think is absolutely fabulous. When these stones were discovered, the interior of the middle circle was found covered with beautiful quartz crystals, which curiously interprets as the debris derived from the stone dressing, but can be better understood as the internal platform laid to shine brilliantly in the sunshine, giving an extraordinary effect to those visiting. This in turn could be considered evidence that the internal area of the circle was never entered when it was first created. Whoa, that's so cool. And that was directly from Stone Circles, a field guide. Amongst the 3 stone circles there are also 2 standing stones known as the Pipers. Legend claims that they were the musicians that was turned into the stone for playing on the Sabbath, with the Hurlers who were playing a risky game of hurling, I presume a ball or some sort, on God's Day. I guess that's Sunday. And that was noted in 1587 by William Camden. The following stone circle we visited, I can't remember what day it was on because I've lost track of the dates we did stuff, but I don't think it matters for this audio tour of Cornwall. What's quite beautiful is the next stone circle we visited adds beautiful contrast to the masculine energy of the Hurlers as we went to see the Merry Maidens stone circle. And this is located on the B3315 between Newlyn and Treen. This stone circle is a beautifully named the Merry Maidens. And folklore-wise, it has got a very, very similar story to the previous monument. This stone circle was absolutely perfect. And even though it had been restored as recently as the 1860s, there was absolutely no information about it where it was, which seemed like such a shame and an opportunity missed by the local council. All the information I've found on this stone circle has been from books. And we only found it because we were looking for it, because my lovely husband had planned for me to go visit it, being my witchy self. If we didn't know where it was, we totally would have drove past it because it was just such a hidden gem and it were dead set on the road with just a little lay-by and a gate. There was no information about it all. You just climb over an historic stone stile, so I read, and it's there in front of you on a little hill. This gorgeous stone circle of 19 beautifully positioned and very accurate stones. I didn't check this, but it is said that the stones marry up to pretty much the exact point of the cardinal directions, which suggests some sort of calendric function, perhaps relating to agricultural year. The commonly accepted interpretation of Neolithic standing stones is that they did fulfil some kind of ritual function, and as a witch, I believe that too. The Cornish name for this beautiful stone circle is Dance Men, meaning dancing stones. And again, nearby there is a pair of megaliths known as the Pipers, similar to the Hurlers, which, according to the legend, are the petrified remains of the musicians who led the Neolithic girls on the Sunday dance, which turned them to stone. The pipers heard the church bells at St. Buren's strike at midnight, and they realised that they were breaking the Sabbath rules and fled, leaving the maidens still dancing. But they didn't move quick enough, and everybody got turned to stone. I really treasure these little stories about how they may have come about, these little folklore ditties of stone circles. And I wonder if every stone circle has them. I'd like to think they do, and I'm so going to get obsessed with this now. I can feel it in my bones. This stone circle was particularly beautiful though. Really evenly spaced out, amazing to photograph. And there was a centre space that had been, I guess, the grass has stopped growing, which to me said that it were used present day as maybe a ceremonial space, and that excited me so much. My daughter, Florence, was really taken by these stones. She wanted to spend time with them. She ended up finding some daisies, and she placed a daisy on every single stone, which of course filled her witchy mum's heart with absolute magical joy. Between these two stone circle visits, we did actually go to Land's End. This was a big deal to me, not because it's a witch thing, but because it's a Swailes history thing. The last time I was there, I was 18, and it was the last holiday I had with my mum. She was ill, but we didn't know what was wrong. We got a picture with the iconic Land's End sign, and I wanted to go again before I was 40 to get another picture with the family I've got now. I won't bore you with the personal details of it all, but it was lovely. The pictures aren't as good quality, weirdly, because I guess 21 years ago they sent it in the post here, whereas this time they print it there and then, and it would a bit blurry and a bit rubbish quality, but hey. But on the wall there was this really cool folklore story which I'm going to read out for you now. And this story is about the lost land of Lionessi, a Cornish tale of myth and legend. Deep underneath the ocean between Land's End and the Isles of Sicily, there lies a mythical land known as the Lost Land of Lionessi. According to legend, Lionessi was a rich part of King Arthur's realm and consisted of a large stretch of land from Land's End at the southwest tip of Cornwall to the Isles of Sicily. A large castle-like cathedral was built on the top that is now 7 stones reef between Land's End and the Isles of Sicily, but the land was considered lost after being swallowed by the ocean on a single stormy night. According to legend, God took revenge against the people of Lionessi and their land after they allegedly committed a crime so unforgivable. The storm wiped the kingdom from the face of the earth as if it had never existed. The kingdom was lost forever. Legend has it that a single man, thought to be called Trevlin, escaped the land, wildly riding his white horse ahead of the furious waves. Maybe that's why we get white horses, like ocean waves are called white horses. While the tale of the lost land seems legendary, there is some belief that Lionessi was once a very real place, attached between Land's End and the Isles of Sicily, with evidence showing that the sea levels were remarkably lower in the past. It is greatly possible that the area did once hold a human settlement that is now beneath the sea level. The lost land was believed to have many churches, 140 in fact. Listen closely, and you might hear the bells still ringing from the churches that were swallowed by the ocean on that stormy night. And that was found on a very big plaque on the wall of the Land's End Centre in Cornwall. I love all this myths and legends down in Cornwall. It's such a cool place. with Arthur and his knights and the round table and all that jazz. Which leads me nicely on to the next stop on this audio tour, which is Tintagel Castle. I do hope I'm saying it right. It does look like Tintagel, or it might be Tintagel, who knows. I have been here before and I'd completely forgotten. Not the last time I'd been to Cornwall, but I'd been before with my mum and I were a lot younger. I might have been 13 or 14, I think it was a bus tour. And I do remember her struggling up the steps and stuff because it is a big ass ruin castle on the high cliffs of Cornwall, and there's a bridge that connects them both. It is that impressive. It's absolutely stunning as a place of historic interest to visit with English heritage, but I do remember her being very scared. It is a very popular tourist site. It was immensely busy when we went, and even though there's workers all over the place saying please don't stand on the ruins because they are very, very ruined because they're so old, people were just standing all over it, which did make me rather angry, I must admit. And I was close to telling people off. They probably would have ignored me, but it just seems like such bad manners and disrespectful to stand on any ruin, no matter what they are. The first settlement here was probably a Celtic monastery founded around AD 500. Little is known about it, or when or why it was abandoned, or what became of the monks there. However, I imagine living there must have been quite hard to deal with because it's just so exposed and open on the south cliffside. More historically certain is the fact that the first castle was built here in the 13th century by Richard, Earl of Cornwall, son of King John. The castle buildings span the island and the facing mainland, so medieval builders would have doubtless have been aware of the monastery remains and kind of built around them. Historically, it was a place of trade and influence connected to communities as far away as the Mediterranean. Roman and Byzantine goods arrived at this remote outpost, showing us that Tintagel's owners were neither poor nor savage. Instead, here are the people who could afford wine, olive oil, fancy tableware, glass, jewellery and such from faraway places. Ooh, swish. People associate Tintagel Castle with Arthur, and Arthur did probably exist in some context. Probably in the 5th or 6th century, he may have been a Roman Catholic warrior who led defences against the Saxon invaders. The earliest connection made between King Arthur and Tintagel Castle was by the 12th century court chronicler, I think that's how you say it, Geoffrey of Monmouth, in his Fanduel. In his what? History of the King of Britain. This dude will have embellished Arthur and who he was as a piece of nationalist propaganda. Blimey, there's some big words in here. I'm reading from Britain's Sacred Places by Martin Symington. It's a very good book. There is a lot about Arthur, and I think legend says he did live there after he'd pulled the sword out of the stone. But famously, Tintagel Castle was the place where Arthur was conceived when his unsuspecting mother was conned by a man who wanted her badly, but she was in love with her husband, who was away at war fighting the boundary of somewhere else in Cornwall. So this dude went to Merlin and was like, all right, fancy that lass. And Merlin were like, well, I can put a spell on you like a mirage, so you look like a husband and you can spend a night with her and yeah, it'll all be good. So he cast a spell on him. He walks up to castle and they get jiggy, and then she ends up being pregnant, and then her husband finds out and is not best pleased. But because she feels really guilty, and she's a woman, of course, women had no respect or power back then, she went to Merlin devastated, and Merlin were like, well, it's your own fault. When the baby's born, I'll take the baby and place it with guardians so nobody will ever make that connection. And then of course that's when he grew up, you know, with his stepbrother Kay and all that before pulling the stone. So I think that's a really cool story, told in the Yorkshire version. Also in the guidebook, there is a mention of King Arthur's footprint near the cliff edge on the south of the island. It's not accessible to the public for safety reasons, so I didn't see it. Boo! But there is a hollow footprint known as the King Arthur's footprint. The footprint is more convincing as an early medieval feature. There are many stone footprint sites and traditions throughout Europe, including the one in early medieval Scottish citadel of Dundalk. The Tintagel footprint may have been linked to early medieval kingship ceremonies where kings or warlords perhaps placed his foot in the stone footprint of his ancestors for good luck. I really like that. That's directly from the guidebook, which we bought every single place we went. Another cool thing was the lovely sculpture on the top of the south cliff of a king. Could be an historic king, could be Arthur, but it is a beautiful sculpture. There was a perfectly formed line to the sculpture to take a picture, which I thought was just incredibly British, like queuing up to get a picture with a random sculpture. But wait, there's more, because on the beach, underneath this amazing castle, is a cave known as Merlin's Cave. Legend has it that Merlin sometimes bedded down in this cave and sheltered there from incredible storms when he wasn't helping out within the castle grounds. Somebody has carved Merlin's face into the rock, and it's pretty life-size, I would say. I would envision like a massive stone face, but it is little and it's high up, but not high up enough so people can't reach it. And unfortunately, people who go past touch his nose, and his nose is obviously changing shape, from all the people wearing down his nose. And that's why we have to stay quite far away from Stonehenge, because people just can't help themselves. They've got to touch it. Okay, get off your soapbox, Swailes. Back to Merlin's face. Don't touch the face. I like it. I think it's a beautiful sculpture of a wizard. But apparently this carving has divided people's opinions. Some people like it, some people don't. The cave actually doesn't belong to English heritage, which I find really interesting. They own the castle grounds and stuff, but not Merlin's cave. That is just weird. But yeah, it's a beautiful beach. It's very small. The hike up and down to it is severe because of all the steps. So not very accessible for people who can't walk, unfortunately. It's a gorgeous place. I can't really talk about my connection because it was really busy. Like, I cannot emphasise just how busy it was. Way too touristy for any spiritual, meaningful connection, which is a good thing. I mean, because that means it's getting looked after and it's making money. And money will keep it in good condition and around for future generations to come. That's it from me for now. And the next one will be the second part of the audio tour, which will include folklore, history, and my experience of the Museum of Witchcraft and Magic in Bose Castle, which was just so impressive and one of my all-time witch goals, and the beautiful sacred area of the Chalice Gardens and the absolutely gorgeous Chalice Well in Glastonbury. Thank you so much, dear listener, for choosing the Bell Witch podcast to fill your magical ears. It's always a pleasure to make these for you, and a hobby, hopefully, that'll never run out of steam. If you would like to show the Bell Witch podcast some love, you can leave a rating and or a review on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen to your shows. You can join the Patreon, where you'll receive bonus content such as exclusive podcast episodes, a Discord community, poetry, journal entries, sigil magic, etc. Or you can tip your witch on PayPal at emma.swailes@ntoworld.com. Until next time, dear listener, stay magical.